Can I request Asma Kumara to lead the chanting for the next one, the 6 sense basis?
Punachaparang bhikkhave bhikkhu Dhammesu dhammanupassi viharati Chasu acchatika bahiresu ayatanesu Kadanjapana bhikkhave bhikkhu Dhammesu dhammanupassi viharati Chasu acchatika bahiresu ayatanesu Ida bhikkhave bhikkhu Chakkunja pajanati Rupe cha pajanati Yanjatatupayang baticca uppacchati samyojanang Tanja pajanati Yadhacha anubannassa Samyojanassa uppado hodi Tanja pajanati Yadhacha upannassa samyojanassa pahanang hodi Tanja pajanati Yadhacha pahinassa samyojanassa Ayating anuppado hodi Tanja pajanati Sodanja pajanati Satteja pajanati Gananja pajanati Gandheja pajanati Jivanja pajanati Raseja pajanati Kayanja pajanati Pottabbeja pajanati Mananja pajanati Dhammeja pajanati Yanjatatupayang baticca Uppacchati samyojanang Tanja pajanati Yadhacha anupannassa Samyojanassa uppado hodi Tanja pajanati Yadhacha uppannassa Samyojanassa pahanang hodi Tanja pajanati Yadhacha pahinassa samyojanassa Ayating anuppado hodi Tanja pajanati Idiyacchattang va dhammesu Dhammanupassi viharati Paita va dhammesu Dhammanupassi viharati Accatta pahitta va Dhammesu dhammanupassi viharati Samudaya dhammanupassi va Dhammesu viharati Vaya Dhammanupassiva Dhammesu viharati Samudaya Vaya Dhammanupassiva Dhammesu viharati Atti Dhammadiva Panassa Satipatthana hoti Yavadeva Jnanamattaya Patisatimattaya Anissito ca viharati Naca kinji loke upadiyati Evam bhikkho bhikkhave Bhikkhu dhammesu dhammanupassi viharati Chasu achattika bahiresu ayatanesu Ayatana pappang nittitang.
So this section on the sense basis is a translation of Ayatana Pabba. Ayatana here is used in other contexts. For example, what is nowadays called the Arupa Jhanas. You heard of that? The Buddha never called them jhanas. The Buddha called them ayatanas. Ayatana. So it's the arupa ayatana, not the arupa jhanas. In fact, he doesn't even use the word arupa ayatana. He just uses the word ayatana. What does ayatana mean? Here it is translated as a base. Well, ayatana is you could say it's a place whereby something revolves or something moves around. All right. So now, when I look at the internal and external sense basis, what is meant is that it is a place where consciousness arises, and it is a place where consciousness lands. So it's a base. Okay. In terms of a place where it arises, the respective sense base needs to be there in order for the respective sense consciousness to arise. Right? Not you must have the eye base for eye consciousness to arise. You must have the ear base for ear consciousness to arise, and you must have the mind base for mind consciousness to arise. Now, out of these 6 internal sense bases, 5 of them are physical in nature. Right? Eye, ear, nose, tongue, and body. But the 6th base, mano, is not physical in nature. The 6th base, mano, is mental in nature. Just like the eye is an organ, a base for eye consciousness to arise, mano is the organ for mind consciousness to arise. But it is different in the sense that it is immaterial, it's not physical in nature. According to Abhidhamma, according to the Abhidhammata Sangaha, to be more precise, mano is further divided into several other things like mano dhatu, and then there's mano dwara. Mano dwara is supposed to be the bhavanga. Bhavanga is supposed to be the life continuum. Bhava is existence, anga is a factor, the factor of existence, translated as the life continuum. This is supposed to occur during moments when there is no active cognition. When your five sense consciousness are not actively doing their job, and when your 6th sense consciousness is also not actively doing its job. When you're not actively thinking or meditating, When would there be? When would that be? When you're fast asleep, for example. When you space out, for example. So at those times, when you're fast asleep without having any dreams, the Abhidhamma Sangha postulates that there must be something there to link all these consciousness together. You cannot just suspend consciousness and then come back again. So there is consciousness going on, and that's called bhavanga. That's why it's called life continuum. It continues the existence, the life of consciousness. The other aspect, the external base, the external ayatana, is the object, right? The visual object, the auditory object, the olfactory object, or rather sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and tactile objects. These are the ayatana, the base where the mind lands on, or rather the consciousness, the respective consciousness lands on. Lands, using it as in a figurative sense. It also arises from a base and it lands on a base. Now that base is the object, because consciousness cannot arise without an object. So it is there together. It's all in a package. Because there is a base for it to arise, it will arise. Because there is an object for it to land on, it's there. If there's no object for it to land on, it will not arise in the first place. Okay? So this is called ayatana. Regarding the ayatana that the Buddha talked about, what we now know as the arupa jhanas, it's called an ayatana because it has gone beyond these five senses. It is a separate ayatana for the mind to land on. Right? That's why it's also called an ayatana. And this term is used for the arupas, because when one goes into the arupas, there is no more awareness of the five senses. If there's still awareness of the five senses, then the mind will land there. But it's gone beyond the five ayatanas, so it's now a new ayatana. And the new ayatana are the four: infinite space, infinite consciousness, nothingness, and neither perception nor non-perception. There's one interesting sutta. I think it's called the Ananda Sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya, where Ayasma Ananda remarked how wonderful it is that the Buddha had taught this teaching that leads to the purification of beings, etc., etc. Whereby, even though the five sense faculties are there, and the five sense objects are there, one is totally oblivious of them. But yet, one is still conscious. One is still percipient. But one is not percipient of those five sense objects. Then Asma Udayi asked Asma Ananda, then what sort of mental state is that? One is still percipient and yet not percipient of the five senses. So as Asma Ananda explained that this refers to the three ayatanas, right? The infinite space, infinite consciousness, and nothingness. He did not refer to the fourth ayatana because in that ayatana there is neither perception nor non-perception, right? So it's like bong bong. So you cannot qualify to say that that person is still percipient. But he's neither percipient nor non-percipient. So this is a very interesting sutta because it shows that only one becomes oblivious of the five senses only when one gets into the ayatanas. Although nowadays, in the Visuddhimagga jhana, one becomes oblivious of the five senses. Right? Those people who achieve or attain the Visuddhimagga jhana are absorbed into their object of meditation, and they are totally oblivious of the five senses. Yeah, but here, the going beyond the five senses is attributed only when one has attained the ayatanas, right? The three ayatanas, and one more ayatana, which he called the Anyapala. Yeah, Anyapala means the fruition of final knowledge. So he's talking about what we now call Phala Samapatti, fruition attainment, but that's only for an arahant. So for the fruition of attainment of an arahant, the arahant's consciousness is still percipient. It's not like it's blanked out and it doesn't know anything. It is percipient. It is percipient of the unconditioned. Yeah, and it's totally oblivious of the five senses. Okay, so now this is just to explain to you the meaning of ayatana. Ayatana means, it has been translated here as sense-based, based in the sense that is where consciousness arises and where consciousness lands. Okay, so this is another scheme, subjective objective scheme, whereby the Buddha asked his disciples to contemplate conditionality and the three characteristics. Okay, so here you see that in this section he says the monk, he knows the eye, he knows forms, and he knows the fetter that arises dependent on both. Right? He knows how the unarisen fetter arises, and he knows how to abandon the arisen fetter. And he also knows how the non-arising of the abandoned fetter will happen in the future. So this is very similar to what we did earlier on with the nivaranas, with the hindrances, still looking at the causes and conditions. So the same principle is applied to all of the six senses. It's very obvious for the five senses because the five sense objects are very clear, right? The eye can only see visual objects, colors, and then ear can only hear sound and so forth. Then when it comes to the mind, or comes to the intellect as it is translated here, mano, the intellect or the mind, he says he knows the intellect, he knows dhammas, and he knows the fetter that arises dependent on both. Okay, so now the question is, what is this fetter that the Buddha is talking about, and what is the range of dhamma that one is supposed to know as a Satipatthana yogi?